will we go ahead and start then?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, everyone, thank you so much for coming to this talk. We're delighted to have Matthew from Calleja here and B from Help Musicians, and they're going to talk to you about applying for funding, mainly aimed towards postgraduate study. So we all know how important trying to get funding and to get funds together to continue our education is. So hopefully we'll all learn a lot from this. I'm actually going through this process as well this year. So I'm excited to hear what you have to say. So I'm going to hand over to Matthew and B.
Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for joining. So yes, as Sinead said, I am Beatrice. I'm from Help Musicians. I'm a musicians development officer. And today I'm just going to cover off some of the support that you can access for support towards your studies. And that's from Help Musicians. Matthew, do you want to quickly?
Yeah, hi everybody. Thanks for being here. I'm Matthew Hargreaves and I run the Calleja Trust. And we have a lot of similarities, but I'll be talking about applications to our trust as well. And there's just a lot of useful information about making an application to charities, to trusts like ourselves, and hopefully some useful information that will help you through the process.
Exactly. Perfect. So who is Help Musicians? So if you're not already aware that we're a charity, we've been around for over 100 years now. And it's a charity providing meaningful support for professional musicians. At the charity, we are all music lovers and many of us are musicians too. So we totally understand the value that music brings and we want to be able to support musicians to continue, thrive and to create as sustainable of careers as possible. Just to give some context, like we've been around for over 100 years, and I think one of our earliest records is helping musicians take their piano exam at the Royal Academy of Music. And we supported this musician with costs towards that exam, and I think we gave them £3 to be able to do that. So looking back through the archive at all the history that Help Musicians has been really fascinating. That's a really nice little part of history to share with you, I thought. So yes, predominantly today I'm talking about the postgraduate awards. I'll go on to talk about that a little bit now, and towards the end of the presentation I'll also talk briefly about some of the opportunities and services available from the charity that might be applicable to you. We've got lots of deadline-free support as well as some support like the postgraduate awards with deadlines. So yeah, I'll be going through that a little bit more in detail throughout this presentation.
Thank you. The Calleja Trust is a very young trust in comparison to Help Musicians, and we were just started in 2015 by the philanthropist James Drake, and we have the opera singer Joseph Calleja as our patron. And we were specifically created to help musicians during their studies. So the Trust awards scholarships ranging from £1,500 to £9,000 just for 1 year of study. And as I said, we're much smaller than Help Musicians. And this year we're supporting 24 instrumentalists and singers who are studying across the UK, as well as 4 junior scholars who are aged 16 to 18. And because of the size of our trust, gives us the opportunity to build up a really good relationship with the musicians that we support during the year. And as well as financial help, the DCT puts on concerts for our scholars. Over this academic year, we've already had 2 concerts at the Corinthia Hotel in London, and we've got another concert coming up in the Purcell Room in March at the South Bank. And all our performances are filmed, so the scholars have promotional material of themselves performing live to use for their own websites and their own promotion. And we have a photographer present who takes publicity shots and rehearsal shots. And as well as this, during the year, there's the possibility for one-to-one mentoring, giving everyone the opportunity to explore and discuss artist development and career progression.
Okay, so postgraduate awards. So what is it? So this is Help Musicians' longest serving support, and it supports musicians undertaking postgraduate performance study within any major conservatoire or music college. if you want to check like which conservatoires is included in that list, then there's an extensive list on our website. So the postgraduate awards support postgraduate study, but as well as final year undergraduate students studying musical theatre. So that's the only undergraduate degree that we support at Home Musicians. And just a bit of background, last year we made over 142 awards. That's 142 different musicians receiving a grant of between £1,000 and £5,000. So who is eligible? So people who have the right to live and work in the UK and living in the UK with a UK bank account are eligible to apply for this support. You must be studying on a music performance related degree. And this must be at a UK conservatoire or performing arts college. So we have had instances where people plan to go to a UK conservatoire, apply, receive funding, but then change their mind and want to go study abroad. Unfortunately, we wouldn't be able to then continue with the award. So it has to be at a UK-based conservatoire. You must be studying for a postgraduate degree, sort of says it on the tin, and then or being in the final year undergraduate for musical theatre. So you have to demonstrate that you are in financial need, as many postgraduate students are, and you'll have to show us within the application that you have a sustainable career pathway. And then if shortlisted, we look for applicants with the music potential to sustain a career in music. So the disciplines that we do support is classical, opera, musical theatre, jazz and pop. Unfortunately, if you are on this call, we aren't, unfortunately at this point, able to support conductors, composers, music teaching courses or music therapy or music business course. So it is predominantly music performance postgraduate courses that we are able to support. And then the really important factor is that applications submitted are for the next academic year. So your eligibility is that you are planning to study from September 2023 into 2024. So that's a really important factor to consider. And we can't support costs retrospectively. So if you're looking for support to cover costs of your current year that you're in now, then that's not eligible, unfortunately. So it's important that you'll be applying for the next academic year.
Great, thank you. Just to say, if you do have any questions along the way, you can either just pop a hand up if you want to ask, or just put it in the chat and we'll pick those up as we go along. Yeah. So the Drake Calleja Trust eligibility is very similar to Help Musicians. And again, this is for applications. Thanks. This is for applications for courses that are starting next September this year, 2023. So the Drake Calleja Trust is open to all performing classical musicians studying at music college, conservatoire or university in the UK. And as well as postgraduate and master's course, we do support undergraduates as well. And we're open to all nationalities with no restrictions on how long you've been in the UK. And you can also even apply from abroad if you've not yet started your studies in the UK. But you must be 18 by the time you start your course. But we do have no upper age limit. So if you're a more mature student, you're also very welcome to apply to us. You should be in financial need and have musical potential, but generally we take it that if you're at music college, you have both of those, we hope. And unfortunately, we are not able to support conductors, composers, jazz or non-classical musicians, but we do have other forms of support for those, which we'll mention later. And as I mentioned, we also have junior scholarships, and those are for 16 to 18-year-olds.
All right, so this part of the presentation is about the application itself, so sharing some tips of what to include and what to expect from a Help Musicians Postgraduate Award application. So the first part of any application, and most applications for music funding, is the biography. So as musicians, we all need biographies for different reasons and different purposes, but a biography for a funder needs to have some specific information. So this is where you show off your experience, tell us who you've worked with, tell us about what you're proud of, any key achievements, where you've performed, what capacity venues were these. It's really talking about all the high points of your experience so far. And with biographies for different types of funding, it's always really a good thing to remember is to always tailor that biography to whatever fund you apply for. So even what we don't want to see is to see the exact same biography that if you do have a website maybe set up already, or you have a press release, if it's copied and pasted from a website, it really shows us that you haven't thought about tailoring that biography to what you're applying for. So that's something really key to think of. And if you want more support on what we like, more support on or explanation about this, then we can talk to you about that for sure. So the biography, some do's and some don'ts. So do key achievements like the things I've just said. Who have you been taught by? Notable performances? Have you attended masterclasses? What things have you learned? What do you want to work on? These types of things. Don't just list all of your performances with no context. We want to be able to really get a full understanding of what you got out of those performances, who was there, who was in the room, was that ticketed, was it a showcase? These are all sorts of details that we want to know in the biography. Also, don't just write a couple of sentences. We do see that sometimes. Word count is there as a guide. So if it's asking you for 500 words, that's what we'll be looking for. If maybe just a paragraph is submitted instead of the expected 4 to 5 paragraphs, then again, that's not really giving that organisation the impression that you've spent some time and put some care and thought into your application. So that's the first question in the biography. Question two. Question two is all about asking you, why do you want to study for another year? So this is where you tell us what your study plans are. So be specific about what this is. So which course do you hope to go on next year? Where? And make sure you list that it is a course starting in September 2023. Tell us about what you hope to achieve in that next year. So are there any particular teachers that you're hoping to work with? Do you already know what performances are planned? What are the goals that you'd like to achieve once you've finished that 1 year? What opportunities while you're in that year of study, what opportunities are you hoping to capitalize on? And also tell us maybe what do you want to learn or achieve by the end of the course. So specific examples might be if you're maybe a double bass player, then you might want to perfect your technique, like your arco technique, perhaps a little bit more by the end of study, and you've identified a teacher in that college that you really want to work with. So that's the section here for you to really tell us why you would benefit for another year of study.
And if I could just add to that, do make it clear which college you're going to, if you're changing colleges, and which course and which year it is you're going to be studying on, especially as we support undergraduates as well. We need to know whereabouts you've got to in your studies. And also, if you haven't finalized your plans yet, maybe you've got more than one offer and you haven't decided which college you're going to, put in an application anyway. You can always let us know at a later date when you've absolutely decided where you're going. But you must get the application in now. We all have quite a short opening window of applications, and if you miss that, you'll miss any possible chance of funding from us. So put the application in anyway, and you can always update us later.
Fab. And then the next section of the application is about your career aspirations. So this is looking out into the future and letting us know what do you hope to achieve following the year of study and what are you aiming towards. So here you would be listing what your short-term plans are and what steps you need to take in order to achieve them. You'd also want to then think about, okay, short term, I want to learn these skills, and in the long term, this will help me achieve X, Y, Z. Talk about what your plans are, your ambitions. Do you have any backup plans? So if you don't, if you say that you want to become an orchestral player at this orchestra, What's your backup plan if that doesn't happen? What's your sort of career pathway? Let us know. Give us an insight into your plans. You can tell us maybe you have an ambition of attending a young artist scheme, maybe a particular training program. Maybe you're planning a portfolio career where you're getting income from lots of different places. So you're not only playing in a regular, I don't know, quartet, perhaps you're teaching as well, or you're having, trying to focus on your solo career as well. So this is what I mean by a portfolio career. So here it's all about talking about what are your future career aspirations, and that should really link with why another year of study is going to help you achieve that. Matthew, anything to add there?
No, I think that's great. I think you covered that. It's just you've explained that very well about a portfolio career, which some people don't know about. So that's great. Thank you.
Great. I've just lost a piece of paper with my notes on, so bear with. Oh, right. Next section of the application. So you're going into the numbers section, which is not always everyone's strong point. It's definitely not mine. But here you're talking about the financial need. So the first half of that financial need section is you're telling us in the written section first, you're telling us about how are you intending to fund your studies. So if you're applying for us with up to £5,000, are you trying anywhere else to fund your studies? Are you having a scholarship? So you're really telling us how do you intend on funding your studies, and then you're going to tell us about some of the barriers of how you can't afford that at the moment. So what are the difficulties or the barriers that you are facing? So perhaps without help, you might have to take on 3 bar jobs, or maybe you've already studied a postgraduate degree for a year and you can't have any further student loans. So here you're really telling us what were the struggles that you'd be facing and what your financial need is. In your budget, this is where then you start listing out your costs, so income and expenditure. So here you'd be working out your yearly costs of where's that money coming from to fund your studies. So perhaps if you've got no other funding and you only list, £5,000 from Help Musicians, but then you've got course studies of up to £16,000, that is the section where you tell us where do you intend on getting further funding, or how are you planning to fund your studies there. So here we want you to be realistic, so do your research, really make sure that you cover all aspects. So you're thinking about rent, study costs, your outgoings in terms of bills, living costs, travel, and then course fees. You'd all be putting that into the expenditure. You have space to write notes, so if you do want to put more explanation as to how you've come to that figure, so maybe it's telling us a breakdown of your yearly costs, so it's rent times 12 months, so maybe that's how you do it if you're doing it in months, with your calculations, or keep it all within one sort of calculation. So don't do some costs on a weekly basis, some on a yearly, try to keep them consistent. And then you have your outgoings. So that could be something like I've just said, like accommodation, food, travel, course fees. And then this budget section then determines your financial needs. So then that helps us prioritize applications in terms of budget. Matthew?
Yeah, great. If I could just add, we at the Drake Calleja Trust also ask for your budget. And just to clarify very simply, we should see your outgoings, which should be your course fees, your accommodation, your travel, food, instrument expenses, and any other expenses, set against your income, which should cover your student loan, any scholarships, any paid work, any money from your parents. And then from that, you can quite clearly show what your shortfall is. So that's the figure we want to see, is how much you still need to get through the next year of your study.
Ooh, here we are. Okay, and then a really important part of the application then is where you're showing us who you are. And so you're required to submit 2 recordings of your, this can be video or recordings. So what we are looking for here is 2 good quality online videos. We don't really have any guidelines on the length here, but I do encourage that, you know, we've got lots of applications coming in. So what we look for is 2 contrasting videos or performances playing 2 different pieces, both in total no longer than 10 minutes. So that would be 5 minutes each. Because as I said, we have hundreds of applications to go through. So 10 minutes is a good amount of time for us to be able to listen to your performances. So here, I think the best usual way to send those in is by an unlisted YouTube video. You are able to submit, you know, links if you want, but make sure that they're not broken, because this is a really important part of your application, and the amount of broken links I see is really unfortunate. So do make sure that those links that you're providing us with do work. Try sending them to a friend just to double check, because we know how things can be when you're trying to copy and paste things into forms. Make sure that those recordings are clear, that there's no sort of background noise, and make sure also if you're submitting recordings of you within a group, make sure it's super clear as to who you are, which one we should be looking out for. It's preferred, so if you are it's preferred if you have solo performance with a piano accompaniment, but we understand if you're in a jazz or pop category that, you know, you might submit an ensemble recording. But again, it's just making clear that, you know, if there are multiple people on the same instrument, just make sure it's clear as to which one you are.
I'm going to jump in if I can.
Please do.
Thank you. So I am going to repeat some of what Bea has just said, but this is the most important part of your application. I cannot stress how important this is. If the recordings let you down, you won't get an audition, no matter how good the rest of your application is. So take time, take care, take advice, ask, make sure you're sending something sensible in, ask your teacher, ask your coach. They don't need to be professional recordings. You can make a perfectly good recording on your phone. However, the quality needs to be good enough that we can really hear you and see you, but particularly hear you. They should be recent recordings. And by that, I mean, they should certainly be, preferably be something done in the last 6 months, maybe in the last year, but not older than that. We don't want to know what you sounded like 5 years ago. We want to know where you're at now and what you're sounding like now. And hopefully you'll be taking this opportunity to build up a little library of recordings, taking every opportunity you can to add to that throughout the year. So you've got a choice, so you've got something fresh that you can send in. I would suggest a few things to avoid are pianists. If you're playing a concerto, don't submit a recording where the orchestral part is played on a second piano. It makes it very hard to discern your playing as opposed to the orchestral part on the piano. Instrumentalists, don't submit orchestral excerpts unless it is really clear that it's a solo and you are the one playing the solo. Don't submit a string quartet recording if we can't hear you. Singers, if you're on stage submitting a live opera recording, it needs to be you singing a solo, and it needs to be very clear who you are on stage, not just a great group of people and we can't really see you. And the quality, the sound quality must be good enough. I've had, for example, somebody submitted a recording of them singing at a wedding in a marquee, and there's so much background noise and wind noise, and it's just not good enough. We can't hear that. So take some advice, get somebody else to listen to your recording, let somebody else be honest with you and tell you if it's good enough. I would always suggest submitting them links on YouTube. You can then make it public or private, and then it's easy. And we will still have access to us. I mean, take in mind that once you submit your application, it may be weeks, even months before we actually have a chance to sit down and listen to it. So not something with a link that will expire. So YouTube is probably best. If you want to submit a longer piece, for example, if you've got a recording of a fantastic concerto you've done, that's fine. You can submit the whole piece, but tell us which bit you would like us to listen to. Tell us where to start listening from. If it's got a 5-minute introduction before you start playing, we may never even get to the point where we need to hear you. So I think that's it. But it's important. Take care, take time, and take advice. Great.
Definitely agree with all of that Matthew said. Right, and then the final last bit, and still an important part of the application, is that we need supporting evidence. So this is choosing a referee to provide a reference for you. So referees are only approached if you're shortlisted for an audition. So with this, we would encourage you to have a think about who that person might be. Approach them as early as possible. Be mindful that, you know, if you've got a head of department in mind that you'd like to approach, they might be incredibly busy with more than just you, many students asking for the exact same thing. So do plan ahead and approach your referee early. And again, then choose, it's very basic, but also choose someone who knows you well. So if we do then get in touch, that they can, you know, give you a really glowing reference, and it's not just somebody who you met a month ago, you perhaps haven't built that rapport with. So yes, that's the final section that we do ask you for, and is providing us with a referee. And
we also ask for a referee, but we will only ask for that reference if we invite you to audition. And as Bea just said, yes, somebody who knows you well. So that would ideally be your teacher, a coach, maybe your head of department, and somebody who's going to write something positive about you, and check that they're happy to do that as well. Brilliant, thanks.
So once you've done all of that hard work of submitting an application, if shortlisted, you'll then be asked to come attend an audition. And here you will perform in front of a panel, and you'll be performing 2 contrasting pieces. The whole programme must not last longer than 10 minutes. So do bear this in mind, practice your programme, make sure you time it ahead of time, and don't just think, oh yeah, that's roughly 10 minutes, because you only get that 10 minutes. So we might ask you to stop after that. So make sure that you're really thinking about your programme carefully. This will be followed by a short Q&A. So it's not, you know, for us, it's not a formal interview. You don't have to turn up wearing a suit. Please don't. Make sure you're comfortable. It's just a short Q&A, just to ask a few questions. This might be about the performance, maybe about the composers, why you picked those pieces. But it might also be about some of the things that you've put in your application. So do make sure before you come to that audition that you have reread your application that you submitted. You do have access to it once you've submitted it. As the panel might just have a few questions and might ask you to elaborate on that. So do make sure that you're prepared for that. But, you know, don't spend hours and hours. It's just a quick recap, and it's an informal sort of Q&A. An in-house accompanist can be available for brass, upper strings, lower strings, woodwind, and voice disciplines. Some just general top tips about coming along to an audition if you are asked to do so, if you're shortlisted, is when you're given a time, do confirm that time with us. Just reply saying, yes, that's great. If it's not ideal, then please do just let us know as early as possible. We can be flexible. We do try to bear things in mind before we give you that scheduled time. So our auditions for help musicians are based in London. So if you are travelling from up north or from Scotland or from Wales, we do bear this in mind, and we won't be putting you at 9 AM. We will try to keep that in our minds. But if you can't, you know, if you can't attend that specific time, then do let us know. We'll try to be flexible. Unfortunately, we can't change days. So that audition day is set, and those dates are already on our website, and we will only be able to accept applications from those who can attend those audition days. So do make sure that you can come along to those before you submit an application. So when attending an audition, come maybe 15 minutes earlier. You will have a chance to warm up, and if you do have an accompanist, then you will have a chance to just go through things with them. Make sure that you've prepared all of the music for the accompanist. Make sure you've sort of taped it together. You're not giving loose sheets of paper, because we don't want flying pieces of paper going about in your auditions, sort of distracting from you, which is the main show. What else do I want to say here? If you do want to bring your own accompanist, then that's absolutely fine. Just let us know. Again, it's all about being communicative. So if you say, yes, you do want an accompanist, but change your mind, please let us know beforehand so we can just sort of schedule in another break for the person who's there helping us out with accompanying. And same vice versa. If you don't want one and then decide that you do, just let us know ahead of time so we can sort of bear that in mind. Oh, and a final note, I think, from me is just if you are traveling from outside of London, Help Musicians does cover those costs. So we're super aware that we've had some, barriers there, having them based in London, but we are able to cover costs for travel. And if you're traveling as part of a larger ensemble, something we have had questions about is if you're coming to one of our jazz auditions, we aren't able to provide a sort of in-house percussionist or percussion player, but we can cover costs for other players to travel with you. Can't subsidize any sort of performance fee or their time, but we are able to cover their travel. So if you are traveling from outside of London, that is. If you want more details on that before you submit an application to Help Musicians, then again, we're very, very communicative, and you can get in touch with us via email, and we'll have that at the end of the presentation. Over to you, Matthew.
Thank you. So our auditions, very similar to Help Musicians. We also ask for 2 or more contrasting pieces of around 10 minutes in total. And again, take advice, ask your teacher. We want to see what you can do at audition, not what you can't do. Occasionally I've had musicians who have submitted a program that I can see quite clearly is less than 10 minutes. You've got 10 minutes, fill it, put in another piece. If you've got a little short piece, make it a little program, little concert program. Also at our auditions, we have an accompanist there if you want to use it, if you want to use them. You'll have 15 or 20 minutes before your audition to rehearse with them. I would say it's always a good idea to get in touch with the accompanist before the day. You do that by getting in touch with me, and I'll put you in touch with them. But especially if you're playing something that's particularly tricky, that may be modern, that may not be standard repertoire, that they don't know, and it might be to your benefit to show them the music before the day. Repeating again what B said, make sure you bring your music with you on the day and make sure it's a proper copy that the pianist can easily play from. And in the audition, walk in the room, smile, introduce yourself and introduce your pieces, especially if you've decided to perform something different, possibly from what you put down on your application form. And something I think is always worth saying is just remember at auditions, we are on your side. We want you to do well. We've invited you to audition because we want to hear you. So we want it to be a success. And as easy as it is to be nervous, we are there to support you in this. After the audition, after you've performed, I put interview with the panel. Really, it's just a chat. We want a chance to get to know you a bit. And we will then ask about your application form and about your finances. And this is where we want to know a bit more about your budget, what your shortfall is, and what you actually want the money for. It may be that you've got all your course fees covered and you want the money to put towards a new instrument, for instrument repairs, for travel, for masterclasses, to work with somebody else. This is what we want to know. So do have a clear idea of how much you're asking for and what you want it for. And it's fine if you want to bring in notes. I know it's often hard to remember all the facts and all the figures at a time. So bring notes into the audition if you want to. That's fine. And also do tell us if you have received other scholarships. It's not going to harm your application. In fact, it's probably a good thing, because it's reassuring to us to know that somebody else has endorsed you. And also, as you can see, we talk to each other. So if you don't tell us and we find out that you have got money from somebody else, that won't look very good on you either. So I think that covers the audition. Thanks.
Okay, so this is the schedule at the moment for our postgraduate awards. Feel free to sort of take a photo of this screen to just keep on your phone for reference. So applications are already open and they close on the 6th of Feb. We'll be holding auditions if you are shortlisted in April. You can check the specific day for your discipline. So we split it by discipline: upper strings, lower strings, woodwind, etc., etc. So we have those dates already published on our website. So do check that you're able to attend those if you are hoping to submit an application and then you're shortlisted. So note that if you are studying vocal studies or voice performance, you should apply now to our postgraduate awards. But if you're on this call and you're an opera student or musical theatre, then our opera and musical theatre, so their specific awards, Sybil Tutton Award and our Ian Fleming Musical Theatre Award, they open slightly later in the year, in April. So you can hold off for a little bit and have a bit more time for prepping. But our general then open to the other disciplines is open now until the 6th of Feb. Yes.
Great, here are our dates. We open on the 30th of January, which is next week. So hopefully you'll have all your help musicians application done and submitted, and then you'll be able to use the same information for us. And then we close on the 5th of March, shortlisting March, April, notifications in April. Auditions. We have the same panel for all our auditions. So it doesn't matter which day you put down. We've got auditions, as you can see, in Manchester on Friday, the 12th of May. Those will be in the Carol Nash room at the Stoller Hall. But if you can't make that, you're more than welcome to put down that you want to audition in London as well. And then we make our award notifications in June. We also offer online auditions, but those really are specifically aimed at people who are not yet living in the UK.
Okay, so we've got this middle section now of the presentation where I'm just going to quickly share some general top tips about funding applications, but not just postgraduate awards, but across the board. So it's funny how they might look obvious, these points on the screen, but I'll elaborate on some of those now. So read the guidelines. Of course, everyone is expected to read the guidelines, but we really do mean it, especially when it comes to different funding, because you really don't want to give a funder an easy sort of excuse to just an easy way to decline an application because you've possibly slipped in an ineligible cost in your budget and you spent all of this time devising a really, really beautifully written application, but then we still can't support it because perhaps there's something that you've included in your budget that we can't support. All of these things are always listed in the guidelines. So for any fund or any organisation that you're applying for support for, do make sure that you read the guidelines. If you can't find them, don't just go ahead and storm through the application. Get in touch with that organisation, get in touch and ask, do you have any guidelines on this fund, so that you can read through them. Again, I can't stress enough how many broken links that I see, so do check that all of your links are working. It's really, really unfortunate when we can't find what you'd hoped to have shown us. So that can be links to videos, links to Spotify, links to your SoundCloud, to your social media. They are all really important to include on your application, so do check that they work before you submit. Yes. Online provides just social media links relevant to your music and your website. So if you are a creative with lots of disciplines and you're talking about portfolio career, then that's absolutely fine. But don't just give us a personal Instagram account, which has nothing to do with your music. not relevant to your application. Again, I would ask anyone, a friend, housemate, tutor, teacher, to just take a quick look over your application. So I know when it comes to sort of projects with our other funds, that you've been planning this project for so long, you know exactly what you're going to do. And because you've been in it for so long, you think that everything that's you've been thinking about is come out on paper. And sometimes it just doesn't. So get someone who's a little bit outside of that project, doesn't really know what it is, to have a read over it, because then they might point out something quite obvious that you thought you had talked about but just haven't explained in full detail. In terms of costs, do your research. I think most funders know, all funders sort of know how much things cost. So, you know, if you're listing for our other funds, we have, you know, we sort of know how much PR companies cost, or how much a campaign will cost, or how much flights cost, how much travel across the UK is. So don't sort of say things which are hugely under budget or over budget either. Really show us your calculations. If you can show us and justify how you've come to that cost, that will really strengthen an application. So if you're telling us that you need £2,000 for accommodation on tour, for instance, with no explanation, we've got a question mark. But if you tell us how you came to those calculations, then that's exactly what we want to be seeing. Use word limits and word count carefully. Those, in most instances, are there for a guide. But if you're not sure, just get in touch with that organisation just to double check. You can say I can see you've got 5,000 character limit. Are you expected to fill that? Or is that just as a limit? Just get in touch and ask. For Help Musicians, we do use them as a guide. So we usually provide a word count for each section of the application. So do use that, and, you know, take up all of that space and really put your best foot forward and showcase who you are as a musician. Do I have any last thoughts or wisdom to share?
I think you've got another page of top tips.
Oh yeah, I have, haven't I? Let's go on. There we go. Don't rush. Yeah, so when applications or sort of funds open, don't rush and get them in straight away. Some funders or some funds don't have a deadline, so you know, you can really give time and thought for that. But if you do have a fund that does have a clear end date, really use that time to just put as much thought into your proposal as possible. So for instance, some of the other funds that Help Musicians provides don't have any deadlines anymore, but as our postgraduate awards, as you've seen, some funds do. So just make sure that you check on those. If you receive support from Help Musicians, you receive a relationship manager by extension. So you're not just awarded money and then sort of left to sort of, you know, navigate that on your own. You are given someone to help you manage your project. You'll be required to submit some reports and make sure that you stay in contact with us. So do use that relationship manager to your benefit, because you can find out a lot more information and get as much out of that opportunity as possible. So do use that as a key contact at Help Musicians if you are successful. You get a relationship manager with the postgraduate awards as well, who can help you with guiding you to, or signposting you to further support, or just to help you find information. As a charity, we have a wealth of information for across the music industry. So if that one person doesn't know that you're talking to, I'm sure someone within the charity does. You know, if we've been around for 100 years, you'd hope that we have some information of what's going on out there. So do use your relationship manager if you are successful with an award from Help Musicians. And yes, do remember that with every fund and every funder, it is still a competitive process. So don't treat every application as guaranteed. There's a lot of sort of risk mitigation and planning that goes into putting in multiple applications. And again, it's being transparent with who else you're seeking, funding from as well. List that into your income, but also let us know whether that's confirmed or unconfirmed. Honesty is always the best policy, I'd like to say. It just gives more transparency on our application. And if we just have question marks, if we're confused after reading your application, that's not good. But if you're really upfront with everything and you're telling us, look, I've got application in for this fund and I'm applied for this scholarship, but I don't know the outcome yet. You know when you might know the outcome, just list that. I would always just be honest with your application. And those are my sort of words of wisdom. Matthew, please do share.
Great,
yours.
thank you. Yeah. So the first one here on this page is don't rush. Yes, leave plenty of time, but don't leave it until the very last minute to be putting your application in. Look at the deadline, plan ahead so you're not trying to submit it as the portal is closing or you find your computer crashes and it doesn't work. Leave time. Again, take advice from your teacher, what to submit, particularly your recordings. And an important thing to remember is if you've got any questions or there's anything you don't understand or you're struggling with, ask us, get in touch with us. We're here to help. You can, my phone number's on our website and email as well. You can just drop us a line, ask for help. It is disheartening if you're not invited to audition or if you don't get awarded a scholarship, but keep trying, persevere, try again. I've got one scholar this year. I think this is the 4th year that they have applied, and this is the year that we have offered them a scholarship. We've been able to see their progression through the years. They've just started a master's course, and I think this is probably the time that they actually need the money the most. So it's definitely worth trying and trying and trying again. And I think something also worth remembering with the Drake Calleja Trust is we don't have different categories. We haven't got a woodwind and a brass and a singers, and all our musicians are basically competing against each other for our money. So it is a very competitive business, and it's worth remembering that. If you are offered a scholarship, please accept it. Get in touch with me, say yes, say thank you, say this is wonderful, say yes, please. It's all the way along. The whole process is about communication, right from accepting an audition, from saying what dates you can come and you can't come, from accepting. And then if you're lucky enough to have a scholarship, it's a relationship that builds up over the year. It's not just here's some money, good luck with your future. I want to get to know you and I want to come and support you and see you performing and see how you're getting on and progressing during the year. So it is the start of a relationship, not just a one-off transaction. And so I would say the most important thing to remember is communication is the key all the way through. Be proactive in responding to emails and asking questions. Great, thank you. So the Drake Yolanda Award is our sister charity, and it's headed by the jazz saxophonist Yolanda Brown. And this is an award for non-classical emerging artists. I think it's from the age of 16 upwards, in fact. So it doesn't necessarily have to be people who are studying. It can be at any point in their career. And they offer awards of £3,000 and performance opportunities as well. And that's at drakeyolanda.org.
Perfect. And then, yes, so I've been talking a lot about postgraduate awards and support for your studies up till now, but Help Musicians also has a wealth of other support. And all of these different strands of support, areas of support, are open all year round. They don't have any deadlines. So this is always a good thing to keep in mind for any future projects. You might have something ready now. So with all of these types of support, they are open or, eligible applicants are professional musicians. So those are musicians who are regularly performing, recording, releasing, collaborating on a professional level. So you might not be at that level yet, or you might be, as if you're still in full-time study, we would still accept an application from you as long as you can demonstrate that you are, you know, regularly performing or releasing music at a professional level, or you're, you know, making money from your music at this time. So just, I'm going to give a really quick overview of these different strands of support. So we've got our recording and record and release support, and that's a fund of up to £3,000. With that, you do get up to 6 hours with 2 business advisors, and they are all specialists in their field working in the music industry, and they can help advise on 2 topics of your choice, which usually sort of support that project. So that's £3,000 to cover any costs with making music, covering studio costs, session musicians, working with a PR company, creating artwork, all of that kind of good stuff. So that's £3,000. We've got the exact same thing, but in support with the Mobo Trust, and that's to give a platform to music of Black origin. So exactly the same types of activity as recording and release, but it's for musicians specifically making music within jazz, reggae, hip hop, R&B. So yeah, that's our Mobo Help Musicians Fund. Again, up to £3,000. Got skills and professional development. I really like this one. It's a slightly smaller fund of up to £1,500. And that can help you sort of take on short periods of upskilling. So maybe there's a particular skill or technique that you really want to sort of get better at, and there's some, you know, one person who you'd really love to work with, but you just can't afford their fee. This is the fund to help you work with those people. So it can help you take an online class, work with a mentor, get a teacher for a really, you know, for maybe a 6-week period to work on a particular technique. You can get some mentoring on a particular area. You can maybe attend a conference to try and gain more knowledge in a particular area. So maybe you want to start networking and understanding more about sort of sync opportunities, and there's this conference, you know, in Europe that you really want to go to. Again, with any sort of opportunity abroad, it's justifying why you need that money and what you want to get out of it. So that's £1,500 for anything to do with skills and professional development. Got our Touring Alive fund, which is slightly larger at £5,000, just because costs associated with this are much larger, especially following the pandemic. So it covers anything to do with the costs like as listed on screen. So with session musicians, PR and marketing, content creation, travel, accommodation, it's very costly to take, you know, yourself on tour, let alone maybe a 5-piece band as well. And with this, you also get that business advice. You do get health support as part of a package of this as well. So those are the deadline-free support. So they're open all year round, no deadline. If you want to find out more about that, there's more information on the website. Again, with even right now with the postgraduate awards or with any of these, you can book a one-to-one call to talk to our, we call them our engagement team. They're at the front line talking to musicians day in, day out. So you're able to book a call to talk through any of your ideas or to check, you know, whether your idea is eligible under any of our support strands. We more than welcome you to sort of get in touch before you think about filling in an application. Something else from the charity of our services that you might be interested in is that we have the one half of the charity helping with funding and helping you create music and sustain a career, and the other half is to do with ensuring that we are looking after our musicians and looking after their health and welfare. So we do have an emerging musicians health scheme, so that is for emerging early career artists, and this provides access to healthcare quickly, so we know how long NHS sort of lists are. So if you are referred to something and you really need to be seen sooner, then that aspect of our charity services could really be useful to you. With anything, if you want to get in touch with us to find out more, then you're more than welcome to do that over email. Again, email will come up slightly later at the end. You can take a picture of it. We've got our 24/7 Music Minds Matter mental health support line, and this is open to the whole music industry. So that's performers, DJs, stage crew, tour crew, whatever aspect of the music industry that you work within. This is a completely free support line. It doesn't always have to be a crisis for you to access this service. It can be a listening ear. It can help provide any advice or guidance on perhaps housing or legal issues that you might be facing, or any concerns about cost of living. Then they can really help signpost you to the right people. So to find out more about the service, it's musicmindsmatter.org. And the number there is you can call 24/7. There's always an accredited counsellor who will answer the call.
There's also there's also the Royal Society of Musicians, who offer something quite similar. And this is just another strand of support, and they support those working across the music profession whose lives have been affected by accident or illness. The number and the website are up there, rsmgb.org. Just worth knowing that there's help out there if you need it.
Yeah. And then here are all of our contact details that we've been saying and promising throughout this presentation.
And again, I'll just chip in. As I said earlier, if you've got any questions, you are more than welcome to get in touch and ask at any point during the application process. I would just mention one other thing, which is the Countess of Munster, who you should also be applying to, but they have a very good funding guide, which lists, I'm just putting it in the chat now, which lists not just other trusts and charities, but also competitions as well. There's lots of information there for you, which is worth looking at, because you should be applying to lots of different places for funding, not just Help Musicians, not just the Drake Calleja. We want to see that you're being proactive in your search for funding, and there are different streams of funders out there who you can apply to.
Yeah, so there's our website, email, you can get in touch, follow us on social media. Any sort of update on opportunities, services are usually updated on those channels. If you want to join our newsletter as well, you might not be interested in what Help Musicians or the opportunities available right now at this stage, but maybe down the line you might want to revisit. So signing up to our newsletter is always a good way to be alerted about any opportunities. And Help Musicians has lots of workshops, free workshops going on as well. Sometimes it's to do with managing, or maybe it's about diversifying your income streams, or how to deal with like self-doubt and rejection, or maybe it's to do with looking after self-care within the music industry. All of these things are updated on our website, and there's lots of free workshops going on all the time, specifically aimed at musicians. So yeah, hopefully that was helpful. Does anyone have any immediate burning questions, which I would be more than happy to answer right now?
You can put them in the chat if that's easier.
Yeah. It's also okay if
pop them in the chat, or pop a hand up. Sorry, B. Or just put a hand up and unmute if you want to ask. Or if you think of something later, you can always come back to us at another time.
Perfect.
Anyone?
I think that's it.
Ooh,
yeah, Dylan. Yeah.
I have a question. Hello. Just for Help Musicians, you said the opera stuff, applications for the scholarships open on the 10th of April.
Yeah.
Do you have any idea like how long they're open, when the deadline-ish is for that?
That's a good question. I think it will be for a similar amount of time. I think they'll still be open for a month, but let me double check that. Is it on the website already? Unfortunately, I don't have all of the dates on the top of my head, but I just know that they open slightly on later in the year, and then we'll hold different audition days for those as well. But if you want to get in touch by email for me to give you a more definite answer, then I can do that.
Thanks.
Sorry. All right.
No worries.
Anyone else there? I think that's it.
Oh, thanks guys so much. That was great. I learned a
Super.
lot.
No
Good.
problem at all. No problem.
Great.
It's such a minefield of trying to, you know, there's a knack to these things, isn't there? Writing the applications outside of the practice and outside of the preparing for the audition, and the application is as important, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you. I don't know if Ed's still there. If Ed wanted to say anything, but otherwise I think the recording saves now.
Great.
So